Hi, everybody. It's Jay Allred here from Source Media Properties, and we are so glad to see everybody who has joined us for this first in a highly experimental, very fast spin-up webinar series related to COVID-19 and the questions that many of you are likely having in your own lives. And what we're trying to do here is really, really simple. We just want to try to be as useful and helpful as we can to our readers as we move through this, this crisis that we're all in and we're all managing and working through as best that we can. So I'm joined today by two friends of mine, two partners of ours who we're very fortunate and glad to have here. Chris Hiner, who's on the screen with me from Richland Bank, who's the president of Richland Bank, is joining us, and Mark Masters, the president of Mechanics Bank, who right now appears to potentially be we're having some trouble connecting Mark to get him onto the screen, but he is in the chat right now, and everybody say hi to Mark. I will be very clear and very candid with everybody. This is the first time that we've ever used this software or done a webinar on this scale in this way. So you are taking a journey with me and Chris and Mark that I'm, honest to God, not all that good at yet. So I'm working on it. But we're going to try to be very responsive to you guys and answer as many questions as you have. So a couple quick house cleaning items. You can ask specific questions, and I would encourage you to do that. Go ahead and ask those questions whenever you want in the Ask a Question section. We've got a poll that is live, and we're going to take it from here. So we're going to start with the subject and why we're here, which is a lot of people are having a lot of questions about banking and finance right now, and we hear this a lot. This comes in through our open source embeds on richlandsource.com, as well as our sister sites, Knox Pages and Ashland Source. And so what we're trying to do here is connect you with experts that can help answer those questions, and then open that up for you to be able to ask them questions in the latter part of this webinar. So I'm just going to start, Chris, with the first one, and that is we are getting a ton of questions from a lot of people asking us, is my money safe? And should I keep a bunch of cash on hand? And I know that Mark mentioned to me in the green room that there were quite a few requests at Mechanics right now that are coming through where folks are making some cash withdrawals, and I think it's something that we probably want to address. So can you help our audience and our attendees know, is there money safe in the banking system?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I see it's not getting audio. Carolyn, can you hear me? And those on the thing.
Well, it looks like.
All right, perfect.
Yeah. Look, most of us.
First and foremost, is your money safe? It is. I mean, we're a well-capitalized institution. There is FDIC insurance that can be structured that can get you $1 million plus of coverage if done appropriately.
Hi, Mark.
Hello.
Hey, Mark.
So go ahead, Chris. Let me let you finish your thought.
I would encourage keeping a whole bunch of cash on hand is not something I would encourage. There's no real reason to have that. I mean, to have a little bit of extra spending money, I understand, but to be pulling out thousands or tens of thousands or more dollars, I would say is unnecessary. If I'm any indication, I got an extra $58 out just in case.
Mark, Mark, I want to make sure I do a proper introduction. Joining us on screen is Mark Masters, the president of Mechanics Bank from here in Mansfield, Ohio. And they have branches just like Chris's company has all over the county and the region. And I wanted to open that question up to you as well, Mark. We had talked a little bit about this in the green room, and probably one of the principal questions that we get through open source is my money safe in the banks? And should I be thinking about cash on hand differently than I would have before COVID-19?
Well, thank you, Jay, and hello to you, Chris, as well. Chris's answer was right on point. I think that the banking system is safe and secure. We've planned for circumstances like this, both on an organizational level as well as on a federal level. So all the things that people are used to doing, using ATM machines, going to their local branch, using debit cards in the grocery, or another example, a gas station, credit cards, all those things should be working. So we don't see any reason. In fact, we see a lot of risk with large cash withdrawals and keeping those at home or someplace where you think it might be secure, but it's very vulnerable to theft, and we just don't think it's a good idea for most people.
That's great. It's interesting. I was watching something on 60 Minutes just last night. There was an interview with the chair of the Fed, and he was making sure to be as reassuring as possible that the FDIC and that the banking system was strong during this crisis, and that there really was no need to to pull out a lot of cash, because there wasn't any danger that the system was going to be low on cash. So it sounds like business as usual is probably the best thing. And when I downloaded some information about this, one of the things, and Chris, you kind of alluded to this, is that taking out a ton of cash and having that on hand really makes you a target for crime that you wouldn't be otherwise if you limited your spending to $58, as Chris Hiner has wisely done.
Well, part of my thought is, where are you going to spend it? If everything is tightened and businesses are closed, there's not a lot of places to use. Your debit card and credit card would be more effective in that manner.
Great. Well, I'm going to move on to the second question that we're getting a lot from a lot of readers, just about, and this has everything to do with everything from our company, which is now 100% remote, to all of the other companies in the area. Maybe perhaps each of you could talk a little bit about how your individual companies are handling things like social distancing, sanitization inside the companies or in your drive-throughs. I know we had some folks that had questions about, are your lobbies still open? So we'll start with Mark on this. Mark, can you tell us a little bit about how Mechanics is handling those issues at their main office and also at their branches?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So like most banks, last week we did close our lobbies to customer traffic, although we are taking appointments. So if there's a significant need, an emergency need, something out of the ordinary that someone needs to meet with their banker, their branch manager, we're taking appointments, and you can see that person. The sanitation part is an interesting question. So I think it's important that customers feel safe when they visit the bank. So we're taking all kinds of measures, first and foremost, to protect our customers and our employees. They include having antibacterial hand sanitizer there, but also all kinds of different cleaning solutions suitable for the surfaces that customers might come in contact with. For instance, door handles or countertops. The ATM canisters, they get cleaned after every transaction, so the next customer will have something that's been sanitized. So we're taking great pains to make sure that people are safe.
That's awesome. Chris, how has Richland Bank handled that in your case? Are you guys enacting similar procedures to what's going on at Mechanics? Did you tell us a little bit about how you're handling it?
Yeah, all of our essential services are still up and running, but as of last Thursday, we went to a drive-through with appointment model. So people are able to access our bankers, and if they come to our lobbies and they pull on the door and can't get in, there's a cell phone number to an email address that we're looking for ways to serve people, but honoring the governor's wishes of social distancing. That's something we're taking very serious for not only our customers, but our associates as well, because we're fighting something that none of us can see.
You know, in light of Dr. Acton's order from yesterday, which is, closing a lot of and limiting a lot of non-essential businesses, it might be helpful to make sure that our listeners, that our attendees, know that all three of us actually are part of the essential businesses list. I don't know. It's like I was kind of excited to run a journalism organization and to realize and to have the governor say we were essential. That was kind of cool. I figured you guys would be, because you're helping us get access to our $58. But I didn't know whether we'd make it, and we were all sort of, there was a little bit of a huzzah that went up amidst our team, although all of them distanced and remote right now, that we made the essential businesses list. What if, and we talked a little, you guys touched about this a little bit, but like I'd like to really specifically dive into this a little bit about talking to a human being or meeting with a human being. People's money and their finances are really key to their well-being. Feeling secure about those finances is really key to their well-being. And sometimes it's just going to be being in front of a person, even if you're 6 or 7 feet away from them, is going to be really important. So if I'm a person that just really wants to talk to a person at Richland Bank or Mechanics, and Chris, I'll start with you. Can you just specifically go through the process that they need to go through and what the numbers are that they can call, or how that process can work if they really want to talk to a person?
Sure. There's many different avenues we can go about using any of our local branch offices phone numbers. We'll get to a live person. That's 419-525-8700. You can also we have a 24/7 customer care center in which people can call in, or they can do web chat to get a hold of someone. Our cell phones are not hidden. More than welcome to call our cell phones, text, email, however you're comfortable. Again, if they come to the branch and they can't come into the lobby, there is a phone number and an email address to a person on site that could help. And then if in-person is deemed necessary by both parties, then we'll accommodate that on a case-by-case basis by scheduling an appointment to get what they need done.
Great.
While observing social distancing.
Hey, Mark, can you talk to us a little bit for Mechanics customers, if they just really want to talk to a person, talk them through what they'll need to do in order to be able to do that?
Well, of course, we have our local answer center here, which is a great resource on all kinds of subjects. So if you call our main bank number, which is 419-524-0831, you'll reach one of our answer center specialists, and they can help you with a myriad of topics, even if it's something that needs researched beyond a specific question concerning mechanics. We can help guide you there. In addition to that, on our website, you can schedule an appointment. There's a special application available to send to us so the appointment can be scheduled. Similar to Chris, each of our branches has information on the doors with specific phone numbers and email addresses to contact your favorite branch manager. And a lot of our customers do have private lines for their bankers, so these are also available. And even though some of our folks might be working from home, those who do have private lines are having their lines forwarded to their mobile phones. So in today's world of technological connections, it's pretty easy for most of us to remain connected and available. There's also things like email and chat, which could be used depending on customers' preferences.
That's great. I was really glad to hear that, and I know that speaking of like my mom or our some of our older residents, jumping on a webinar or grabbing a FaceTime with their banker may not be the preferred means of communication. So I wanted to make sure that we were addressing if they needed to speak to somebody in person that they could. The next thing that we've been hearing a lot about, we hear some of this through our friends in law enforcement, but I know that you guys are connected into these questions as well, and amazingly, in the midst of a national pandemic or a worldwide pandemic, criminals are busy, and they look at this as an open for business and an opportunity for them. And so we're hearing a lot of questions from folks about coronavirus scams or COVID-19 scams that are meant to take advantage of people who frankly are a little uncertain and scared. And I thought it might be helpful if you guys could talk a little bit about what's normal. Like what would be normal communication from Richland Bank or Mechanics Bank to your customers, and what would be abnormal communication, so that your customers, if they've heard it from you guys that, look, this will never happen, or we will always do this, or we will never ask for that, it'll help our attendees know and have sort of a better spider sense of what they might be seeing if somebody calls them. So Mark, I'll start with you. Like, what would Mechanics Bank customers be able to expect in terms of what's normal communication coming from the bank that they know can be safe and they can feel comfortable, and what would be abnormal?
Well, probably easier to talk about the abnormal. Our normal communication can take a number of different avenues, but for instance, in this day and age, we would never ask somebody for a password. Confidential private information, that's not a normal inquiry from not only mechanics, but from any company. And it's also the type of information that scammers, or what we refer to as bad actors, they always are requesting. So right now, they're preying on the vulnerable, those who are frightened or scared, isolated, particularly the elderly. For instance, one interesting scam that seems to be just based on this particular fear is that people are impersonating representatives from the FDIC, and they're calling bank customers, and they're saying something like, "Hello, this is so-and-so from Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. We want to make sure your deposits are safe." And then they proceed to ask them for specific banking information, the name of their bank, account numbers, special parts of information that might help them fraudulently identify themselves as that customer. So just be wary of anyone asking for private information. And as far as mechanics specifically, our customers will always ask you to identify yourself with information that we have on hand, and that we will not ask for things like passwords. We will not encourage you to give vital information, for instance, Social Security numbers. We would ask, in the case of trying to identify a customer, we would ask for a part of the Social Security number, not the whole number. So I think all banks are practicing those careful inquiry characteristics now.
Thanks, Mark. Chris, can you elaborate a little bit on on how Richland Bank handles it? I would imagine that there are certain things that you guys probably do exactly the same in terms of the way that you handle customers' confidential information, but you might be able to riff off of what Mark has.
Absolutely, what Mark said was 100% spot on. Or sending emails out to verify your full account number, verify your full debit card or credit card number. That wouldn't be something that we would send out. Pressure if you're feeling pressure from somebody to act, it's not from us. And I'm sure it's not something. I guess that my biggest advice would be to slow down. If you're getting forced to act, do nothing. Call the bank itself. Hang up and call back. If people are calling and saying, "Hey, you can't hang up," that's a red flag. Being in tune to what's going on, and not to feel that you have to make a decision right then and there, would be something I would say is critically important.
That's a great point, and it in terms of the pressure that can be applied. I remember at one point this was a year or so ago, we had someone call our business, and they were impersonating, I think that they were from the electric company. We had just moved into our location at IdeaWorks, and so they had this sort of plausible story that we hadn't paid the electric bill for 6 months, or like during the transition we'd failed to pay the electric bill, and they were going to. And as we kind of walked through, the signal, they had lots of information that they needed in order to seem plausible. But the thing that tipped us off was that this was just way too much pressure. This just was not the way that an electric company would operate. And it took us a second to kind of register that feeling and turn it into a thought. But once we did that, we contacted law enforcement. Law enforcement assured us that this was happening to a number of different businesses in the region. And we were really glad that we had learned that. But
Jay, just if I could offer real quick,
please.
Another point of vulnerability is found in email messages. And another thing I don't think banks are doing is sending you emails and requesting you to click on links that might take you to, it might introduce a virus into your computer or take you to fraudulent websites. So be careful. Always review your emails, make sure you know who they're from, that you can specifically identify the sender and the address line, and look for clues that they might be fabricated. Little nuances or changes that you're not used to seeing, whether it's from your bank, a utility company, or any of the companies you do business with. It's just rampant how people are trying to duplicate emails sent from legitimate companies.
That's a great point. I want to move on to our next question, which is maybe it's a little bit more optimistic. 3 weeks ago, we were in the midst of a go housing market. Every realtor that I talked to, everybody that was in that stream, including buyers and sellers, couldn't believe how Mansfield and Richland County and those regions' housing market had rebounded. Transactions were at record highs. People were buying and selling in the market. And interestingly, I had spoken to several friends who were brokers last week, and they were reporting that transactions are still very high in the midst of COVID-19. Folks are still buying and selling a home. But I thought that this would be a great time for you guys to just talk a little bit about, for those folks that might be considering a transaction, maybe it's not a home, maybe it's a car, maybe it's a large transaction, one where being on either side of that transaction. Nothing's changed, but everything has changed in the last 2 weeks. And so from your perspective as bankers, what should people know today so that they can make a good decision in today's environment? Chris, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. In regards to specifically real estate, it is not necessarily business as usual, but we're still lending money. There was concern, but got clarification that the Richland County Recorder is going to be open, and remain open, and that will be a positive thing. It'll help the title companies. Our realtors are still active, and people are buying houses. But there is some fallout of this as well. There are some people that are saying, "Hey, I'm going to hold off on listing, or I'm going to remove or reduce the showings just to keep my family safe, and that's understandable. So patience is key in this process, but it is their business is still happening. But I would just encourage people to be patient, and the thing that we don't know is how long this is going to last. And the fear of the unknown is fearful, and I empathize in that regard. But for those that need to move or want to move or buy a vehicle, their opportunities are out there.
I had heard that exact same concern last week about the recorder's office. And for those of us that don't do a ton of real estate transactions, you really can't close without the recorder's office, right, Chris?
That's correct. Well, the title companies need it to make sure that there's a clear chain of title, and then the recorder needs it to secure the bank and the owner transfer as well. And there were some counties throughout the state that did close. And so they were out of business. But when I called Sarah, the county recorder, she said, no, it's business as usual. We may restrict the amount of people here, but most people don't come here anyways. They can do everything on uslandrecords.com through Richland County.
Great. Mark, do you want to touch on anything there?
Well, right now there's a lot of activity based upon falling interest rates. People are asking about refinances or modifying their loans to take advantage of newly reduced rates. Chris mentioned that doesn't seem like this is going to be, these developments won't go away quickly. So again, I think people can be patient. The banks are trying to get to these requests as quickly as they can to facilitate either refinances, modifications, buying and selling properties, but there's no reason to get in a hurry. I think one of the things that's been characteristic of our real estate market, and this is not a new development, is there's been a shortage of inventory, or the number of houses actually up for sale. So most of what's affecting commerce today is the psychological impact, where there's great uncertainty about things going on around us, particularly whether or not you might have a job or you'll get to go back to work. So that is affecting the buyer's psychology. And maybe it's not the greatest time to sell a property, but still, there are people out there looking to do business.
That's and actually that offers a great segue into sort of a sixth question that developed, and then we'll turn this over to our attendees and let you guys sort of drive the question asking. And so make sure that if you have questions that you use the ask a question feature. It'll be easier for me to be able to sort through those than to try to go through the chat, but we're moving toward that phase in our conversation where we're going to take some questions from the audience. And again, please offer me as much grace as you can, because this is the first time that I've run one of these shows. So it'd be much easier if we were all in front of you, and if I'm looking off to the side, it's because I'm reading your chat messages or I'm trying to make sure that I don't screw this up. But the sixth question that I had, and the last question that I had for you guys, is that all indicators point to that there are going to be folks that you do business with right now that are going to go through some financial hardships. Many of them may be going through those financial hardships right now. It's such a fluid situation. I know that the state, local, and federal governments are mobilizing to try to create safety nets for people that might not already have them, to fast track things like unemployment, to create ways for employers to keep people employed. But I think we'd be burying our collective heads in the sand if we didn't think that there was going to be some financial hardship for some of our fellow citizens and residents here. Talk to us a little bit about where, and you don't have to have a full answer, but if one of your customers is enduring some financial hardship, or they're afraid of that happening, or they sort of know that it's coming, what should they do? what should they do? How should they contact you guys? Talk to us a little bit about what the process can be for them to be able to work with you to figure out, what the next steps might be for them. And Chris, I'll start with you.
Sure. The biggest thing during this time is, again, we're very empathetic to everyone's situation. So communication is key in that regard. Whenever you're feeling those stressors or even the fear of the unknown, reaching out and let's have a conversation. On our website, on the COVID-19 section, there is a portal for customer relief for both businesses and consumer, so that we can get directed to the right person. Because we do have a lot of people working remotely right now, we can get them to the appropriate people. But having that opportunity to have that conversation, we understand everybody's situation is a little unique, and we would like to just take that time to have that conversation and plan, because each situation is a little different. If this lasts 2 weeks, if this lasts 3 months, I'd say everybody has a breaking point or a tipping point that there could possibly need some help, in helping them figure that out and helping us create a game plan is critically important.
Mark, talk to us a little bit about how that process might work at Mechanics, and what you guys have in place now, and what you may be putting in place as we move into sort of what feels like it's going to be a next phase for COVID-19 in America and Richland County.
Well, Chris hit on the most essential thing, and that's communication. Don't be shy about communicating with your banker. Don't be shy about relaying to us what fears you have, and help us understand what your particular set of circumstances are. There's many different ways that we can be helpful. We're certainly aware that people are feeling fearful that they'll be able to continue making their loan payments as planned. We're here to help. So each situation is unique. There's a set of circumstances that applies to you that may not apply to someone else. So talking to your banker, communicating with them about the things that you have in your life is the most essential thing. But what we're hearing from regulators, the people that we report to, is that they're encouraging all banks to have an attitude of forbearance and forgiveness, and trying to do what we can to help our customers, whether they're individuals or businesses. So please just contact us, and we'll try to work with you in whatever way we can.
I think that's just it's such a great way to answer it, Mark, and it speaks to both of you guys coming in here to talk to us in this way, and all of your staffs, and to be truly local bankers that are living here and are part of our community, and are really dedicated to the to the well-being of the community. It means a lot for us to have you here. We're starting to get some questions in, so I think I'll just kind of move right through those. Cheryl Meyer asked a question that I think we've started to answer already, but how do you see this affecting the real estate transactions and industry? But if you've got anything else that you want to add in terms of that, it's hard to, if either one of you have your crystal balls, that would be effective too. Like that you can help Cheryl.
Year this year, but there will be people that are buying and selling houses, so we'll both be here to help serve you.
Great.
One of the things.
Our next question comes from Ruthie Good, and I think that we may have already addressed this one too, but I just want to touch base. Ruthie's probably, it looks like she's maybe a Mechanics customer, and so this question's for you, Mark, is do you anticipate that the Mechanics banks will stay open, and will the hours be the same? And that's actually a different flavor than what we were talking about, is because it sort of goes back to the governor's order in terms of identifying banks and financial institutions as essential businesses. But Do you anticipate your hours are going to change?
Our hours are extended already, so no, our hours won't change. They won't be reduced. The drive-throughs will be open. There's standard hours available to customers. Our lobbies, people will be available for appointments as needed. Really, for appointments, they might be outside of the normal hours if it's essential for a customer, but we're there to serve. One of the things that we're doing to protect our people is that we're making sure that we have enough staff on hand to take care of business. But because our lobbies aren't open, we might ordinarily have more people in those locations. But at this point, we're asking them to stay home. We've developed a rotation so that employees have an opportunity to stay home with their family. A lot of them have childcare challenges. So the bottom line is we're open. We don't expect any changes in the hours, and our people are there to serve you.
That's fantastic. This is a great question from Amy, and didn't even occur to me. She says, I would like to send money to a relative or a friend affected by COVID-19. How do I wire money to or from an institution? I'll let either one. Chris, do you want to jump in here?
Sure. Our wire department is open and ready to do business. You could also use online bill pay, and we can help get you set up through that, whether we do online banking and bill pay, or we have a feature called Pop Money, where you could send it directly from a person to person instantly. So there's many ways to get that there.
Hey, Mark, Amy's interested in sending money to a friend or relative affected by COVID-19, and she wonders how with mechanics, how would she go about wiring money to or from an institution?
Well, I think one of the messages beyond what Chris just mentioned was that earlier we talked about these payment systems being intact and staying available for customers. So there's no reason to be concerned about these ways of transferring money from bank to bank being disturbed. So in addition to what was already mentioned, there are online capabilities with mechanics that you can make bank-to-bank transfers. So if you have the information about the customer that you want to send money to, or the acquaintance or family member, you just need some banking information from them that you could enter into the proper places in our website to make those transfers. Wire transfers, very common. They're probably the most expensive way to do this. But as Chris mentioned, there's a myriad of ways to send money to others for helpful reasons.
That's great. And then I think Amy asked another quick question here, which is, we don't have a lot of specifics from Amy on this, but I think that you guys can probably deal with it in a general sense, which is, I didn't receive my direct deposit. Perhaps that might have been a direct deposit from her payroll, or it may have been from something else. And her general question is, what should I do? I think this goes back to communications with the banks. And so if you have a customer, or you were expecting a direct deposit from either an employer, or perhaps from someone that is paying you, maybe talk a little bit about what action should they take in the event that money that was supposed to be there is inexplicably not there. What should your customers do? Mark, I'll start with you.
Well, I think first of all, make an inquiry with the bank to make sure that you've actually looked at all the places that it could be. Perhaps online, it's not as easy sometimes to see individual transactions, and it might be overlooked. But we'll be glad to double check for you. It might be as simple as that. We also would know, for instance, if it's a payroll file, we would know if it's been delivered to us. So perhaps your employer missed the deadline or the cutoff, and it may be coming the next day, we can help with information like that. Of course, depending on who the sender is, that's also another contact that you can make, inquiring with the sender. If it's coming from a governmental entity, like a Social Security deposit or something of that nature, that's a little harder to check on specifically by inquiring with the government. But we will look into it and do what we can to help determine where the money's at or when it will be coming, and see. We'll play amateur detective just to try to figure it out.
Right. I imagine that's not an unfamiliar role for you guys with your customers sometimes. Chris, how about at Richland Bank? Anything different there, or do they follow pretty much the same steps as Mark has outlined here?
Format. Amateur detective is a good way to say that, and just contact us, contact the sender, just to make sure that there wasn't a disconnect somewhere along the way, because we're posting it as we receive it.
That's great. Well, listen, I want to, first of all, before everybody goes, I want to say thank you to Chris Hiner of Richland Bank and Mark Masters of Mechanics Bank for trusting me to be my guinea pigs in this sort of three-ring circus that we've never done before at this source. And we're just really lucky that they are partners in this, newsroom partners with us, supporters of independent local journalism. We're just very grateful for that. And I want to tell everybody before you go that this is not the last time that we're going to do this. In fact, our plans are for at least the next 2 weeks, maybe the next 3 weeks, to have these webinars every single day, every weekday, from 12 to 1 approximately, on different subjects. And the goal here is to try to provide constructive, solutions-oriented conversations at scale with folks that have questions. And I want to tell you a little bit about our schedule for this week. I've posted some links in the chat, but tomorrow at noon, we're going to talk about caring for our elders. We're going to have a guided discussion with Duana Patton and Teresa Cook from the Area Agency on Aging. We are either elders and we're a little worried, or we're worried about our elders a little bit right now. And we're going to talk about ways that you can help and be part of their lives in an era where we're supposed to be away from them. Which is which brings all kinds of uncomfortable stuff. How do I make sure that my neighbors have enough to eat? How can I help? And Duana and Teresa are gonna talk with us about that. So if you have a person that's a little bit older and they're in your life, this is a great option. This is a great session, and we hope that you'll be there. On Wednesday, I'm really excited that we're going to be joined by Jody Perry of the Richland Area Chamber and Economic Development, and Jen Keim of Downtown Mansfield, Inc., to talk about the environment for small businesses right now, which is crazy and moving super fast and super fluid. It changes every day, seemingly at 2 o'clock when Governor DeWine takes a podium. And we're all in this together. And Jody has taken a spectacular leadership role in our community recently, making sure that people understand what's going on with small business. Jen is deeply plugged into downtown Mansfield and all of the merchants and businesses that need our support there. So we're gonna talk with them on Wednesday. On Thursday, we're gonna teach you how to be a pro at remote work. I'm gonna be joined with my colleague and friend Chris Cruson from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Chris is a longtime journalist and has run remote teams with members from Vermont to Washington. And so we're going to be going through some really helpful tips for if your team is newly remote, if you're managing a team that is newly remote, if you're a newly remote worker, what are ways that you can, what are tips and tricks to being successful and to kind of taking on this new environment where your kitchen table is your office, and making it into something that's working for you. And then finally on Friday, let's see here, what does Friday look like? this is all coming together over the weekend, so you'll forgive me if I don't have it all memorized. Oh, yeah, on Friday, we're going to have a conversation about our kids and helping them manage their fear during the coronavirus. We're going to be joined by Emily Talbot, who's a clinical social worker at Providers for Healthy Living here in Mansfield, as well as Kristen Gilbert, the CEO of the YMCA. Y happens to be the largest child care provider in the county, and so they know a little bit about helping kids manage their way through fear and insecurity. So all those sessions are at noon. You can register for them, I think, probably pretty near to where you are right now. If you follow Source Media on Crowdcast, I think you'll be notified of upcoming times when we go live, so you don't have to kind of constantly think about it. And then finally, once this broadcast ends, which we're coming toward the end here, the sessions will be available to rewatch and to share with others if you think that they're worth it. We will be certainly sharing these to our social media channels at the Source when they're done. And first of all, we just want to say thank you very, very much for everybody for attending. If any of these ideas or if any of these subjects you feel like they're a good one and you want to share them with your friend, please do so we can connect these experts with as many folks as possible and answer their questions as well as we can to, again, provide some solutions and a little bit of control in an uncertain time. And so thanks again, Mark. Thanks again, Chris, for taking the time out to be with us today. And we'll let you guys send us off, and thank you guys very much.
Thanks, Jay. Thank you, Chris.
Yep, thank
Chris.
you, guys.
All right. See everybody. We'll see you tomorrow at noon, and let us know if we can do anything better, or if you have any suggestions for topics. We're happy to hear from you. Thanks a lot, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.